Baked Bros presents the Know Your Dose podcast. Join hosts Nadeem Al-Hassan and Derek Espinosa as they turn the soil on the cannabis industry. With over 10 years of combined industry experience, these two experts will deliver your dose of cannabis, psychedelics, and personal development. Follow on their journey as they aim to destigmatize cannabis, combat the abuse of pharmaceuticals, and implement their altruistic approach into the budding cannabis industry.
Happy Friday, everybody. It's Friday Q&A Sesh, and we are back again. Derek and I have a few questions to address. The questions are getting better. I like it. I like having these questions come in. So, Derek, let's dive right into it. Number one, how are you, my friend?
You know, feeling blessed, sir. Feeling real good. How about you?
Yeah. Hey, another great week bites the dust. So, question number one, what are the different types of terpenes and what do they do?
You know, that's actually a super interesting question because most people make the false assumption that terpenes just categorizes everything, but it actually can be broken down even further. Now, I'm not going to get into all the different types of terpenes, but there's, things like monoterpenes, which is pretty much encapsulates most of the terpenes that we're going to talk about in cannabis. There's also sesquiterpenes and diterpenes, but essentially there's a variation of different types of terpenes, but most of the ones from cannabis like myrcene, linalool, pinene, those fall under the monoterpene category.
How many are there, and what are the 5 most primary terpenes found in cannabis?
That is actually a perfect delineation. So in cannabis, I believe there's over 200, between 100 and 200 different terpenes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. One of the cool things about the cannabis plant, in my mind, is that it does produce all these terpenes that are found in other plants in a huge variety. So that's pretty interesting. Now, the most common terpenes are typically limonene, myrcene, linalool, pinene, and beta-caryophyllene. I would say those are the 5 most common. And those are the ones you see the most abundant in certain strains that give certain strains their primary effects.
Yeah, very nice. And between those 5, which are more indica-related side effects and which are more sativa-related side effects?
So myrcene, which is present in hops, is typically more relaxing. Linalool is found in lavender. That's also more on the relaxing end. So those are heavy in like Granddaddy Purple and other heavy indica strains. On the more uplifting side, you have things like limonene, which is found in lemons, which is typically, uplifting. That's why they actually put it in a lot of cleaning products because it associates vitality and tries to make cleaning like an energizing like thing that's enjoyable. Pinene is another one that's commonly found in sativas. It helps reduce some of the negative side effects of THC in terms of how it impacts memory. So you think of pine trees and again, that like fresh pine sol. And then the one that kind of is in the middle is beta-caryophyllene. So beta-caryophyllene is found in black pepper. One of the interesting things about beta-caryophyllene is it binds to CB2 receptors. So it's the only terpene that I know of that binds to anywhere in the endocannabinoid system. And it doesn't seem to have, strong effects in the uplifting or sedating arena, but it does help with anxiety, pain, inflammation, things like that. Excellent.
Question number 2. What is the difference between strain specific and dominant specific? I actually didn't even know this. So why don't you go ahead and take this per usual?
Yeah. So when we're talking about dominant specific, what we're talking about, is it indica dominant or is it sativa dominant, right? So I guess this is kind of like it's a hybrid question. If I have a hybrid, let's say it's OG Kush, is it indica dominant or is it sativa dominant? If I have Blue Dream is a sativa dominant hybrid, right? OG Kush, there's a lot of debate back and forth. There's different cuts of OG Kush. So like SFV OG is typically more sedating than maybe a traditional OG Kush. So there's differences there. And then strain specific refers to the specific strain. And I think probably what this person's getting at is I go into a store and someone says they're dominant specific. What they're really saying is this edible or product is saying it's either heavier on the indica side or heavier on the sativa side. And when a specific strain is used, that's meaning like we have a specific terpene profile, specific cannabinoid profile, flavonoid profile that we're utilizing here. So in my mind, I think that strain specific is probably the right level of analysis when you're looking for a product, because again, you want to get as granular as possible. You want to know what terpenes are in that product. If it's just a dominancy, I mean, how many sativas are there? I don't know, tons, right? And how many sativa dominant strain or dominants are there? Well, you could take a whole bunch of variations of terpenes that all fall under the category of sativa, mix them around. It doesn't really tell you anything. But a specific strain has a specific terpene profile, so it just gives you some more consistency.
Very nice. Thank you for breaking that down. Question number 3. Why should I try edibles again? I had a horrible experience. I'm going to take this one.
Yeah.
So, at Bake Bros and being one of the co-founders, in the early days, I did a lot of the education days where we would go into dispensaries, and on average, we would see between 1,000 to 1,200 patients a month between all the dispensaries that we would go into. And this was one of the most common questions that I encountered and that our team continued to encounter when patients would come into the dispensaries. So they would see us set up and they would ask, and we would say, hey, we've got a special going on with edibles. And they'd be like, oh, no, I don't do edibles. I had a horrible experience. And, to me, that's an opportunity. I'm like, yes, excellent. Let's talk. And so, because I wanted to find out why, right? And this truly was about 80% of the people that came in that addressed us. This happened to be the case. And, the most common story is that, I ate too much. I tried an edible. I cut it in half, just like the bud tender told me to do. And then, I ate, this is in the early days too. So I will say that the patient assistants and bud tenders are a lot more, or just a lot more educated now. Anyways, and so they would eat the other half of the cookie or the brownie or the edible, and it was a horrible experience. They'd be rocking back and forth. So number one, the reason you should try an edible again is because ingesting is going to be far more superior in terms of effect and duration whenever you are working with cannabis. So when ingesting, it's less invasive on your lungs because obviously you're not smoking anything. And then again, ingestion or by eating the edible, it's just going to have a much longer duration. So this would be my first go-to reason as to why. Derek, what do you have to add on that?
No, I think you highlighted some really important things. The lung piece is really important because I think that there's this false perception that because cannabis doesn't cause lung cancer, that it's good for your lungs. And there's also this idea that cannabis can treat asthma. That's something that's kind of permeated our culture as well. And while there may be some utility to that in specific instances at specific doses through a specific delivery method, if you're smoking a blunt or a joint or bong hits, that's not good for your lungs, right? Like that air is way too hot to be useful. So edibles do offer an alternative. The other thing that I think is critical is, like you said, the duration of effects, man. I think people misunderstand what that truly means. With inhalation, if I need to provide relief throughout the day, I have to inhale multiple times. With an edible, that extended duration means that I don't have to be on this yo-yo of effects all day where it's up and then down and then up and then down. I can have sustained relief. The last thing is, I just think it's easier to, once you dial in that dose, to make sure that dose is consistent forever. If I'm buying flower or I'm buying vape cartridges, there's just a lot of variation from batch to batch, from strain to strain. And I think that edibles kind of solve for that problem. So that's kind of some of the things that I think about.
Start low and slow. Guys, happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A. Keep them coming. Please leave a rating and review. We appreciate you so much. Bye. Hey, everybody. Quick disclaimer. The Know Your Dose podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Let's be real. None of us are doctors. Our content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical or public health advice. Please be smart and always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Seriously, never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast. That would just be insane.